So, hello and welcome along to Susty Talk, Edie's new series of video interviews put together to keep our audience of sustainability and energy professionals talking, feeling connected, and resolutely optimistic through this period of lockdown here in the UK and beyond. I'm Edie's content editor, Matt Mace. It is Thursday, the 30th of April, so well over a month into lockdown now, and the weather seems to have taken a bit of a turn for worse outside my window, which is probably a good thing when you're in lockdown, actually. The sunshine feels like it's almost mocking me in my kind of dingy two-bedroom flat. And joining me for this episode of Susty Talk, we have Zoe Haseman, the Vice President of Global Sustainability at engineering firm Jacobs. Zoe, thank you for joining me. Whereabouts are you joining me from today?
Hi Matt, thanks for having me. I am on the south coast of England and the sun is shining here, I'm afraid. So apologies, you haven't got the same weather, but yeah, I'm between Portsmouth and Chichester on the south coast.
Great, that's good. No, not too far from myself in Hayward Heath then, albeit I've got the clouds at the moment. So could you just talk me through what life's been like in lockdown for you and the rest of your team at Jacobs? How are you still managing to keep kind of sustainability ticking along during this time?
Okay, well, it hasn't actually been too much of a difficult transition. We are a sort of globally dispersed team anyway, so rely on virtual connection for the most part. My team is spread across the States, up in Scotland, and in the UK and down in England as well. So virtual connectivity is not a new thing for us. I think the fact that is the only means of communication has probably been the toughest thing, that you don't get to go into the office, and it's all now 100% that way. But yeah, I would say we've all adapted fairly well. And I think Jacobs as a whole, we're a workforce of 52,000 people all over the world. And I think within sort of relatively quick period of all of this kicking off, we became pretty much 100% virtual workforce. And managed to adapt fairly well. And, I think it's the same for everyone. Everyone's getting used to it. We're all now playing around with the Microsoft Teams backgrounds as well. So, people calling in from the beach in California.
Yeah, I resisted the urge to do that for this talk. I haven't just found that function myself. It's the small pleasures that keep us going, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
And a question we've been asking everyone that's been on this series so far is whether the kind of lockdown and just the kind of economic uncertainty that's surrounding the coronavirus pandemic has kind of paused or stalled any announcements. We ran a survey of CSR professionals before lockdown kind of really was cemented, and I think around 60% or so said that they were planning to just pause sustainability announcements. Obviously, that's not the case with Jacobs, because you made quite a big sustainability commitment last week. Do you care to share what that is to our audience?
Yeah, sure. So last week on Earth Day, we were really pleased to publish our climate action plan. So our global sort of commitments in terms of how we plan to take action, our position around climate action. And yeah, we published that just last week.
Great, and there's some notable kind of net zero aspects to it as well. I think operational by the end of 2021, and then you're exploring carbon negative for 2030.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so some short-term goals in there as well. Immediate action around sort of carbon net zero, and our target there is for our operations within this calendar year, and then carbon negative by 2030.
Great stuff. And will you expect any kind of changes to the data as a result of obviously offices being shut down? Has that going to make, I don't want to say easier during a pandemic, but is that going to kind of make that transition to carbon for this year at least a bit easier? And then when offices do reopen, you're going to have to probably recalibrate.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, one of the things that, we planned, the climate action plan has been part of our strategy for the last year or two. And we've been working towards the plan, always with the April 22nd date in mind for publishing, way before COVID and the pandemic all happened. And, just to get back to your original point, we didn't divert from that, even though the situation and the circumstances have changed. I think there was a great understanding from our leadership that the climate crisis is still very much here. It's still very much in front of us if we don't take action. And we shouldn't let this time, obviously reprioritisation has happened across the board in our organisation, but this was one area that there was never even a question mark over whether we should, slow down or stop on the publication, which was really great and encouraging, and made me very proud to work for Jacobs, that we were still sort of like seeing this as important and still prioritising this amidst all the mayhem that's happening right now with the pandemic. So yeah.
And so you said it was kind of signed off well before the lockdown, that the plan was always for Earth Day, and that's quite a nice hook to be able to kind of cement a commitment to sustainability. So how's the feedback been since that announcement? Certainly across other areas of the business as well. They've been kind of getting in touch virtually to kind of ask a few questions and kind of congratulate, or?
Yeah, well, we how we sort of put together the climate action plan, it was a very collaborative effort from the beginning. We relied on we have carbon experts, climate experts around the business, and we formed like a multidisciplinary team to look at where Jacobs was at and where we wanted to go on this journey. And there was a lot of stakeholder engagement as part of that process as well, building out that plan. So really the idea was that it was a shared plan for our people. And yes, I think our employees generally were really encouraged that progress wasn't stalled in this area in terms of publishing and putting our commitments out there. Because really the timing of that hasn't, the fact that we're in this crisis now, the timing of putting the climate action plan out and the importance of that hasn't changed anything. And we still really need to take action around decarbonisation and climate resilience and everything else now and in the future.
And yeah, we've seen a lot of talk at edie from a range of economists to green groups to kind of government and world leaders as well about these kind of green recovery packages and how nations and businesses aren't ignoring climate change. We had the Petersburg Climate Dialogue earlier this week, for example, where kind of Alex Sharma, Dominic Raab all came out and said that no, net zero is still very much on our thoughts, and I think a lot of businesses, the fact that yourself and hundreds of other businesses kind of made new commitments and announcements during Earth Day shows that. But we are seeing a kind of narrative that the severity of the climate change threats needs to be treated with the same sort of seriousness that global governments have treated the coronavirus outbreak in terms of a response. Do you feel there are any lessons that we can take from how we've adapted and kind of really focused on coronavirus and be able to apply them to climate change mitigation down the line?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think, this is kind of like, it's a practice, isn't it, for all of these things that we talk about and that could one day hit. And, there are so many parallels to draw and lessons to be learned from this experience. I think, the physical shock, the systemic shock of what has happened with the pandemic is what we can anticipate happening with climate crisis further down the line. And I think, showing that, really encouraging that the conversations around climate change and action towards that is still happening now. And I think it absolutely does. And I think in a way it has, the shock that people are feeling now, it makes it more relatable to what could happen in the future if we don't take action right now. I think this whole, this notion that solving a pandemic and the crisis, the public health crisis that we're facing now, that, boundaries have to be thrown out the window, national boundaries, government boundaries, societal, all of these, it really takes cooperation, cohesion around the world to solve for this issue now that we're facing today. That is very much the same as how it's the only way that the climate crisis is going to be addressed and solved, by taking the similar kind of global connective action. So I think this is, I mean, it's not practice, it's real, but it builds that resiliency and the way that we need to think and act for the future. And I think the fact that the climate, all these conversations, the Petersburg discussions that have just happened, all of that, people are in a really great mindset to be able to make decisions that are right now for climate crisis. So I think it's encouraging. I think it's an opportunity. I mean, no one would ask for this opportunity in the way it's come about. But I think if we are to take anything from this, there are great lessons that can be learned and taken forward. And I'm encouraged to see that a lot of governments and businesses, a lot of the rhetoric is around that at the moment.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think there was a real danger that climate change would slip down the corporate and political agenda, and it has to a degree, and rightly so. But I think everyone is still very much has their eyes on that road, and it may even open up a few kind of behaviour change avenues that we didn't think were relatively possible. Certainly around transport and the idea of concept of healthy buildings. Do you see perhaps attitudes towards certainly reducing transport emissions and kind of the creation of more healthy infrastructure and buildings rising up in prominence as part of this green recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they can be separated out. I think, like you said, the stimulus packages that are coming forward, the economy, I don't think any government's going to be able to sort of shy away from how, determining that money is spent in a way that drives sustainable progress. I think we're seeing, particularly in Europe already, great signals that, cities, local governments are, using this opportunity to sort of plan for, all of these improvements in the future as well. So, Paris, Milan, they're all just recently announced that they're going to be turning roads into cycleways and pedestrianised, and, which will lead to, fantastic reductions in emissions and improvements in air quality as well. So that's all really heartening, and I think we'll see a lot more of that as well.
Yeah, it's a very uncertain time ahead, but I think it's good to be optimistic in these times, isn't it? And for your own organisation, then for the remainder of 2020, I imagine that's certainly up to debate based on the measures of the lockdown, how long they last. But what's the kind of key focus for you from a kind of sustainable business perspective for the rest of the year?
Well, I think for us, sort of delivering on our climate action plan commitments as well. Obviously, what 60% of our measured carbon footprint was from business travel, and obviously when the lockdown happened, all of those emissions have been put on hold. So that has, it's certainly expedited us a behavioural change. I think the focus for us in terms of reducing that, without a travel restriction, was really going to be a huge challenge in terms of driving behavioural change, to challenge people to not travel as much for meetings and to virtually connect and do all the things that we're having to do now because we have no choice but to do it. So I think the way that the pandemic has expedited all those behavioural changes will be really helpful in terms of delivering on those climate actions in the long term. I think the challenge for us is when we come out of lockdown, that we don't just rebound back to the old way. So I think that, that absolutely is a focus, and there's several initiatives, global initiatives within our business at the moment during this time, looking at what that return to work looks like and using this opportunity to take pause and to really reevaluate what the future looks like in terms of the workplace. And we're talking across, experts in workplace design, experts in culture, experts in digitalization, technology, all coming together within Jacobs now to really sort of evaluate what the new normal could be, and really how we derive sustainability benefits, decarbonisation benefits from that new strategy of workplace, whatever that might look like in the future. So yeah, so I think as a business, we're really sort of taking a step back from what work used to be to what it could be. And, that's not just around our physical workspace, but it is also around culture, behaviour and tools as well.
Yeah, that's a really good way of viewing things. And just finally then, Zoe, a question we're asking everyone is just what they're doing, I suppose, to keep sane during lockdown more than anything, just to kind of, make sure that kind of spirits are up and that work doesn't kind of just dominate them. I mean, lots of sustainability professionals, they love their work, so it doesn't really feel like too much of a chore. But I mean, for me, for example, when I finish work, I move from my dining room table to my sofa, which is about 5 yards away. It doesn't really feel like there's much of a break between work life and private life. So what kind of tips are you doing just to break up the day and kind of keep your own spirits high?
Yeah, I think that separation from work is tricky right now. Do you know what? It's helped that the weather has been amazing here in the UK since this has all happened. So, I'm definitely using my daily exercise to get outside. And for me, I need to like run or cycle or just to decompress. So that helps. I have 2 young kids in the house as well. So as soon as I open the door to my sort of office space, they bombard me with all sorts of things. So that's a huge distraction. And then just making sure I connect socially as well, because I think that's a really important way to balance things out. So, having many more phone calls with friends and family than I did before, and over video conference as well. And a nice glass of wine and cooking a nice meal at the weekends always helps too.
Yeah, I can. I think I agree with everything you just said there. Very, very similar.
I know I wish I had something more original and creative, but the truth is I'm probably doing exactly what everyone else is doing. But it's working for me, so that's what matters.
There's only, you can only be so creative and original in a lockdown where the whole global population is going through the same thing. So I think it's
Exactly.
so thank you so much for being such a great guest for this new series of ours. I know just how manic things are for everyone at the moment, so I really appreciate you stepping in and setting some time away to have this conversation with me. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And for everyone watching, we'll be back soon with the next episode of Susty Talk. We've got a couple lined up for our Engage week, which is a week all about communications and reporting for sustainability professionals. But in the meantime, stay safe, stay positive, and keep up the Susty Talk.